Come on, ping in. I guess we're in. Okay, awkwardness by dawn, 24/7. Um, welcome back, my friends and new friends. I'm Dawn Scannell. This is my podcast, Bounce Back and Bloom. Thank you for attending. So, this is our third interview around the topic of suicide. So, if this is a triggering topic for you, bounce off. No need to attend. If you want to learn more about the subject and make it seem a little less, it's always going to be scary, but a little less out of your realm of things you know about it, hang around, find out. Because this is my mission now, is normalizing conversations wrapped around mental health and wellness, the same way we talk about our physical health and wellness, and they advertise so heavily at us. We need to do the same with mental health and wellness, because if you hadn't noticed, they're intrinsically linked. And we are not all going to be okay until we're all able to talk about all of these things, right? So today, our guest is Jess. And Jess, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Jessica Padula. And
Tell us about your story, why I asked you to be here. You don't have to go from like top to bottom right now, but just give us a general overview about why am I talking to you?
We got linked up through Sandra from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I became involved with them this year in a fundraising effort after completing the David Goggins 4x4x48 running challenge. I raised a bunch of money for them because in 2015, I lost my husband to suicide. And shortly after his passing, I had my own attempt. And since then, I've made it my mission to keep the conversation going, to shine light in the dark spaces so that we don't feel so alone and so unique.
Exactly. That's exactly why I'm doing these interviews, why I have these conversations. Because if there's just one person out there who comes across the video and goes, "Oh, I'm not alone," then I'm good. I've done something. So tell me about, how did you go from processing, or maybe not processing, only you can answer that for me, your husband's suicide, to your own attempt?
Like what happened in that short period of time? I pretty much, not when I found out, but like the next day when I was speaking. So he was active duty in the military. He was in the Navy. And when I arrived at our house in Virginia, where he had passed, the people in charge of him and in charge of that Navy base came to our home and were talking to me about next steps and things like that. And I knew in that moment that it was my responsibility to take care of his like final affairs and plan his funeral and things like that. But as soon as that was over, that I was probably going to be done being alive. And so that sort of escape route kept me going for those couple of weeks to get everything kind of in line. And yeah. And then it was what I felt my turn, because I didn't know how to keep going, like how to keep living, how to keep being a mom, how to keep being a teacher, how to keep being a human at all. So
Can you give us a little bit of an idea of where were those deeper feelings coming from? And I'm just going to spitball and throw things out, and you can tell me what it was for you. Is like, so was it just, how do I go on regardless of how he died? How do I go on without him? Or was it, how do I go on with the knowledge of how he did it? Or deep regrets? Do you feel like you let him down?
Yeah, so it's a lot of that. I didn't know how to live without him. Also to live as a single person. I had not been alone since I was like 15. It was like relationship, marriage, then second marriage. It was like, there's no space in between. but also I felt responsible because, as I said, he was in the military and stationed in Virginia, and I was with him there, but my kids were here in New York. Um, and so we lived apart. My kids and I lived apart for a year, and it was just awful every day, missing them. So I, talked to him about it. I said, I have to go back to New York, and we'll just have to figure out how to have this relationship and have this marriage while you're in the military, or you'll figure out how to get out. And that was the understanding, and that was the plan. So I came back to New York on a Friday, and by Sunday he was dead.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. How do you not feel responsibility for that?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you took action, and so did he.
Yeah. And he was like supportive, like, of course we'll figure this out. You have to be with the kids. Like, no note, no inclination that this was not okay. So yeah, I felt absolutely responsible. And so living with that sort of guilt and shame about also if I had just like loved him enough. I think that's something that we oftentimes, well, first of all, when we have a lack in ourselves, we try to go save other people because it's distracting, right? Like if I can save someone else, then I'll make that mean something about me and my self-worth rather than, focusing on my own things and trying to heal my own wounds. But then also just like tying up your self-worth in the approval and acceptance of another person. And so I made it mean that I didn't do a good enough job loving him. But here's the thing about mental illness: you can't just love it away as much as we want to. It needs like therapy. Sometimes it needs medication or intervention. Love, sadly, is not enough to just make things go away.
Right. Because normally there's a lot of layers to whatever it is that presents itself.
Yes.
Eventually, right? So it could be, for anxiety, it could be so many things. For depression, it could be so many things. And none of it is within our control, those of us who are going through it. And sometimes it takes everything to get things righted, because sometimes you need to address the chemical imbalance and take the medication so that you get to a place where then you can talk through the shit, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also let it be known that those of us who are going through it, that are have huge loving hearts, the last thing we want to do is bring this to the table for our loved ones, right?
Yeah.
Often that's the case. And we think we're doing the right thing by keeping it to ourselves, but then it sets up a chain of events like what happened to you, which was completely blindsided, didn't see it at all. Even in hindsight now, do you look back and go, oh, that should have been a flag?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. This was not his first attempt. The first time, so we were together a long time ago. We met in college. So like I was 18, he was 20. We were together for a bunch of years. Then we separated. I got married and had kids. Then we met back up again. So the first time we were together, he did have an attempt then. And as a 18 or 19-year-old kid, I was a kid. I had no idea what to do. I remember telling his mom, and just, I think nobody knew what to do. So it was kind of like, well, maybe if we just don't talk about it, it'll go away. And just like addiction, if we just don't talk about it, maybe it'll go away. Or if we, hide the liquor bottles behind the couch, then it'll be fine. And it's not fine. So, and then in the time that we were separated, he had another attempt that he told me about once we got back together. But then he also said that he would never do anything like that again. So yeah, I was left with the feeling of, well, how could you not know? But also, how am I supposed to know if you don't say, hey, I'm having a really hard time with this?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, right? Like, why would he want to put that on you? Like, obviously, I could see his intent behind saying, I would never do that in this situation. Right. Yeah. Like, that comes from, like, this cannot be overstated enough, people. Suicide is not a selfish act for that person.
Mhm.
That is a myth we really need to dismantle and toss aside. Like, they're not doing it for selfish reasons. If you've never been in a mental health crisis, I can understand you're not understanding what it's like to be in that person's shoes, but I can assure you, when they are at that wall, it's because they see no way out. They absolutely see no way out of the pain, right?
Yes, and being someone who struggles with depression and anxiety, I I get it. And whether that's, I mean, I choose to see it as a gift because I do understand him and what he went through, and I understand how this happened because then it happened to me as well. I made the same decision as well. Um, and you're right, it's not selfish or spiteful. It's, you don't know, you don't see any other way. It's like the pain or the thoughts or whatever is so loud, it's louder than, um I don't want to say common sense because that doesn't even really exist, but it's louder than anything else, like any other resource or logic. It's louder than logic. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, that sounds like the perfect wrap around it, the perfect framing. Um, because I know that only in my own personal experience, I've suffered from a low grade depression my entire life, but that didn't come to light until I was sitting in a psychologist's office, about to be treated for clinical depression because my son's father walked out on us. Um, and I was scared to death when he asked the question, have you ever given thought to suicide?
Mhm.
And now I'm a deer in the headlights. I have nowhere to go. I'm in his office, and all I can think about is I need to lie, because what if I say yes, they're going to take my kid away.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a clear and present danger is what's going through my mind. And I'm like, he said, okay, you just gave me your answer by not answering and having such a difficult time with this. And now I'm like, great, what have I done? But then if you don't know and you've never been in a situation, the next question is, have you thought about how you would do it? Right. So
Mhm.
from there, the psychologist can say, oh, if I had a plan of action, then
Mhm.
yes, I am a danger to myself. But I
Mhm.
didn't. I was at this place where I was like, I failed everything. My son's father walked out. Obviously, that's my fault. I'm rolling
Mhm.
my eyes, people. Right. And how can I best serve my son? I've already failed him desperately. I wish I could just disappear. Right. And then he could go on and find the good people and have a good life, because I am not it. Right. So now that is not me saying that dissolves from anything that somebody else is feeling. It's just that I have an understanding of that wall that can come up. And while I didn't have a plan, if I was not sitting in the psychologist's office and then went through therapy, would that wall have changed for me eventually if I didn't get help? Right? Would I
Yeah.
have come to a place where I could no longer cope and started putting a plan in action? Right?
Yeah.
So there's so many variables, there's so many steps, and just because somebody is sad doesn't mean they're thinking about killing themselves. And sometimes the happiest people are the people you have to think about the most, right? I mean,
Mhm.
they've been saying that over this last year because we're all going through this collective trauma, and people have been talking a lot about, like, check in with your strong friends, because
Yeah.
they're the last person on your list, right? And I can remember when, I was working in a commercial lines of an insurance agency, and I brought it to the table. Look, this is what's happening. This is why I have to leave once a week to go to therapy. When you hear my alarm phone go off, I'm taking my medication so I don't forget. This is what I'm dealing with. And people would say, you are the happiest depressed person I've ever met. Like, you're always so up. And it's like, oh, you have no idea. Like, that is what I have to do in order to get through this day at work. Right. Like, this is
Mhm.
all performance. So you never know who's doing performance art for you when they're having lots of things happening in their life, but they look like they're okay. It's definitely okay to check in and go, no, how are you really doing?
Yeah. So agree. Definitely check on your strong friends. And I'm going to push back just a little because I think
Sure.
sometimes it is a performance, but other times, like in my own experience, it's not. So I've learned how to take, for lack of a better term, like the shit and turn it into something good. So my depression, my anxiety, my trauma, and turn that into a message that's impactful and powerful to other people. And so I may come across as like, got it figured out and all together, which I do. At the same time, I still am going through episodes of depression. So like for me, it's not an act, it's real, but also at the same time, those two things are existing together because it's the way that I have figured out how to be alive, how to
manage it.
Yeah. How to carry on this existence is like, well, you have to take it and turn it into something else. Because if I just leave the depression and anxiety here, I'm going to get swallowed by it. So I'm just using it as fuel to like complete challenges and raise money and make other people understand that they're not alone. And, like all of that.
Yeah. And please always feel free to push back because I don't know everything. God knows. But yes. But then again, I'll come back to check in. And when you check in and you go, how's it going? Like if you know the anniversary dates of things, right? Like, so I'm a widow too. My second husband died 7 years ago. It was 8 weeks from diagnosis to death. So so you don't have time to process things, right? And that doesn't mean that my experience was more tragic than anybody else's. I push back against that when people were like, it's so tragic. I was like, no, there are really big tragic things that happen in the world every day. People die every day. I'm not okay with it, but please, I'm not whatever. So when you ask though, ask twice is all I'm saying, right? Like when they say, oh yeah, I'm fine, I got this, or, yeah, everything's cool. Are you really? You know what I mean? Take the risk to be, is that really the final answer? Tell me more.
Yeah, I think it's important how you frame the question as well, because so often like, how are you is a blanket term that you would, a question you would ask a cashier that you don't even know. And that's not to say that we shouldn't connect with, because that's like something that I'm famous for, is like every restaurant that I go to, the wait staff remembers me forever because I make those personal connections. But it's something that you would say to anybody. And when somebody asks me like, how are you? The immediate response is good. Because even if I'm not good, I don't necessarily want to get into that I'm not good. And when I'm not good, I hold resentment to the person who's asking me in a passive way, because then I'm like, well, now I'm either forced to tell you that I'm not good or lie to you and say that I'm fine. So what I try to do is, in passing like that, I'll just say, it's good to see you, rather than how are you, if someone's like not in a space to talk. But if I want to really check on someone, I might say, how are you feeling about this anniversary date that's coming up? I was thinking of you, and something like that.
Wonderful. Thank you. I mean, like, this is why I love having these conversations, because every time we learn new tools, right?
Yeah.
Of how we can be in the world. And I'd like to point out, for those who don't know me, what's happening right now is I'm talking about all of my stuff. And anytime I mention my late husband, even in passing, this happens, right?
Oh, that's because of that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's all the emotions beneath the surface, coming up, heating me up. So don't anybody be scared. I'm not going to have a heart attack. I'm not going to stroke out. It's just, this is what happens when I'm emotional. I might not be crying on the outside, but inside things are happening. So just so everybody knows, I'm not having some kind of weird physical event. It's just an emotional one, and I'll be okay.
Yeah.
But I love that. I will definitely make note of that and incorporate it into how I check in with people. And also it gives me also some thought about how I answer people on those anniversaries myself. I've talked about this one friend I have that was there. She's been there through, she attended my third marriage. Right? Because I met a boy when I was 14, but it took us a long time and a lot of life before we figured out how to be together. she was there when my first husband walked out, and in the depths of everything that was happening, we worked in the same place. She could hear me crying at my desk in the next room. She came in and she just sat in front of me, put her hands on my knees, looked up at me. She was crying too. She said, I don't know what to do, but please understand I'm here. Right.
Yeah.
And suddenly I had this lifeline to the world. She wasn't afraid to see my pain. I don't know what my life would have turned out in those days if I didn't have that one person who was scared to death, by the way, but still was willing to witness and see and hear my pain. Right.
Well, that's so powerful that she was able to overcome her, whether whether it was fear or feeling of inadequacy, like I don't know what to do for this person, but she stepped in and got in your face anyway. And I think, did it then give you the ability to be vulnerable with her because she was vulnerable with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's one of the most beautiful things that I've been able to witness is like, for example, I have a really close friend. She lost her very close friend to COVID last year, like back in the early stages. And the day that he died, she was with me, and I just got to hold her and witness her have, I mean, God, it's like a visceral experience right now just thinking about it. She just totally broke down in front of me, and I just kept looking at her as the most beautiful human in the world because she was having such a human experience without trying to control it or put, glitter on it. She was just feeling these emotions, and I felt just so honored to be there with her and that she felt safe enough with me to be that way. And it's tough because same thing. I was like, I don't know what to do, but be there for her and hold space for her. So I think that's a really great gift to give each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to give and receive help.
Right. Right. And also that is an example of when you don't know what to do, just being present is enough.
Yeah.
Right? Just being present is enough, not trying to fix anything, not trying to gloss anything. It is what it is. It is raw in those moments. I can remember when my second husband, the day everything came crashing down and I'd brought him to the hospital, and he's in ICU and he's going into his second crash. And I found myself wondering why I can't get away from this noise. And it was me in an alcove in a fetal position outside his room screaming. But in the moment, I was like, what is that noise and why can't I get away from it? And it was me. And it's okay. I'm talking about it, not because I need anyone to follow up with me about this or that it makes me a good person or a bad person or any of the things. What I'm doing is I'm telling you there are so many ways to be a human during these times, right?
Absolutely. And sharing that. And I like that you said, you're like, I'm good. I don't need you to follow up with me about that thing. You're telling a story of a thing that happened. And, like right now, sitting here talking to me, that event is not happening anymore. You've moved, and I would never say moved on, but you've moved forward to be in this position where the noise did stop.
Correct.
And there's nothing wrong with how you dealt with that. Sharing it is just being an example of what it is to be human, and that you can make it through things.
Absolutely. And it's not a weakness and you're not broken,
No.
right? It's a moment in your life. It doesn't define your life, right? These things.
Yeah, I mean, strength is certainly subjective, but I think the stronger thing to do is to share the thing that's so human and, could be embarrassing or scary. To be vulnerable is, I think, is a superpower.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And cracking open your own vulnerability allows other people to crack open theirs because
For sure.
right.
It's like a show and tell.
Right. And that's one of the ways that I can facilitate normalizing conversations about mental health and wellness. Because if you think about it, it really directly parallels the way we get together with our friends as we get older. And people will get tired of me saying that. We'll get together, we'll be out at a restaurant and you're talking to people you haven't talked to in a couple of months, and you talk about every ache and pain, weird bowel movement, right? Right? Like seriously, you talk about all these bodily functions out in public, right, with your friends, but people are still having a hard time starting the conversations about, hey, I hurt. I am struggling. I don't know what to do. Help me.
Mm-hmm.
Help me. So having these, cracking open my own vulnerabilities is just so that maybe it crack opens other people's. And, we're all here, reach out. None of us are experts, but I will gladly point you into the right direction of the people you need.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm your start point, happy to be it. So tell us now, now that I have you in my Facebook feed, I'm exhausted by your posts. I don't mean that I'm exhausted of your posts. I mean, I am exhausted by the amount of physicality you have in your life. And I get why I get why you do it. And all of us are different. Like my go-to is yoga, always has been. It puts my brain and my body back together every time. But doing it by myself, for myself, is not something that works for me. I literally have to go to someone else's class that I feel safe with to completely release myself, surrender to their practice.
Well, that's wonderful that you're able to do that. I certainly relate. Yoga is like that for me sometimes. It's a huge part of my life, and I've been a yoga teacher for like 8 years or something. I've owned a yoga studio for like a year and a half. So yoga is the fabric. It's actually like the thread that stitched me back together and that I extend to other people. It's really what the underlying thing is for me all the time, even though it's not the thing that I talk about the most. It really is something powerful to be able to go to someone's class and let them lead me, because in my life, I'm the leader. I'm the leader for many reasons, partially because of my anxiety. I need to be in control. I want to say when, for how long, with who, all of that. And I'm really good at being the leader. So wanting to be led and being able to find a teacher or a coach who I can just be like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. It's like such a relief to be like, but not be on the watch for a minute. And I understand that about my students and about the athletes that I coach in CrossFit, is like, sometimes you just want somebody else to fucking be in charge.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Can you just do it? Because I'm always doing it. And so, yeah. I agree. So in yoga, I get that sometimes. Most of the time I do my own self-practice. I get it certainly when I'm being coached in CrossFit. Running, not so much, because I'm usually on my own. But yeah, it's like, oh, it's so good to let somebody else.
Right. But it's a process for me, because like I joined the Y expressly because you have access to all of the different locations in the capital region, right? You join and you're not stuck in one place. So literally I go to everybody's classes and I find those one or two teachers that completely I feel safe with, and then I just stalk their classes, you know. Because, and I can go to a yoga class and feel 10 times worse about myself and my mental health leaving because I didn't feel safe in there, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It just means that they're not that person for me. And that's okay too, right? Find your people.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because you're right. Like we will not all connect with the same teacher or the same people. That's why there's so many different people in the world to be friends with or have be your teacher. And like for me, being a yoga teacher, going to a yoga teacher's class, if I find myself wanting to mentor that person, then I'm not in my practice. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel safe with them. Not safe like they're going to do anything to me, but just oh no, I need to teach you how to do this.
Right.
Yeah. And so to those listening or watching, if you have gone to do a physical activity and you didn't connect with the teacher or the coach, try someone else. And it's
Correct.
okay. It's not because they're like a bad person. You guys just don't vibe together, and that's okay.
Right. Right. Which is why, I'm happy that there are so many people doing the same things. And also why, like I'm a coach, I'm a consultant, I'm also a yoga teacher. But I concentrate on the littles, the littles all the way through college. Um,
Okay.
but like I'm happy to sit and chat with any other coach who's still even like doing kind of the same thing I am, because it doesn't matter, right? Because my people are going to find me and they're going to be attracted to me because of who I am. And they're going to find that person and be attracted to them because that's who they are. And that's okay, because there's enough for freaking all of us. Um, but yes. So after my husband died, a couple years afterwards, I had spent so much time in my head processing, beating myself about, oh, did I say the right things? Did I not say the right things? Did I take care of him the right way? All of that stuff, like, did he know how, at the end, did he know? Um, all of those things, that I got to a point where I was like, oh my God, my head is like over here somewhere. My body's over here. And I need to get I need to get them put back together and realigned and working together. And yoga had always been something I drifted in and out of, from my 20s forward. By then I was in my mid 50s. I was like, so I scouted out yoga teacher classes because I wanted to go through the boot camp. Basically, I wanted to like commit to something that I couldn't back out of. And so then I went through and I interviewed different teachers and I laid it all out. I was like, so this is me. I am in my mid 50s. I haven't practiced regularly in years and years. I'm overweight. Are you going to be okay when I go into child's pose for the 5th time in the first 20 minutes of whatever we're doing? And I found somebody who said, yes, please please join, please come, and allowed me to be.
Yeah.
And it did everything I imagined I needed it to do. It really did put my head and my body back in a place. And from there, I was like dealing with some things with some teenagers in my extended family and watching them struggling with depression and anxiety in huge ways where they couldn't even go to school. I was like, okay, I'm going to channel this into the kids. Right? Because at its best, yoga can teach self-regulation, right? Self-awareness, empathy for others. And I was like, we need to give them the tools to help themselves, because the school system is not, right? And it's a lot of times is the thing that is causing a lot of the anxiety, the fast tracks we put them on, etc. I went off on a tangent, going to reel it back in.
I'm the tangent queen.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will go like on a topic, and then it's like the next one, and then I got to bring it back to the train station. Like, where did we start?
Right.
But what you're speaking about, the separation between mind and body, and how powerful yoga is at putting those two things back together. It's not like, sometimes it is because of trauma, depression, or events that are happening, but also there's something that happens like when we're born, and there's a period of time where you're not even separated from your mother. It's like a couple of years before you even drop into your own body. And then you're like this kid full of self-expression, and you'll say whatever it is that you're thinking, and are not concerned with the opinions of other people. And then as we like get a little bit older, go to school, we have like all the influences of society, we start to separate from our body because we're concerned about what we're supposed to be doing, what we're supposed to look like, who likes us, and like all the approval that's outside. And so having a practice where you can get back to your own self, like the center of your body, your being, you as an individual, it's like that pursuit is what gives us the ability to hold space for other people, to be empathetic, to have these types of conversations. And I was just thinking this yesterday. I was listening to a podcast. I've found that people with issues with mental health, and or those that are in recovery, whether it's drugs, alcohol, those are my people. Those are the people that I'm the most attracted to, because they're taking something that maybe they're probably like, I don't think any of us would choose to be alcoholics or depressed people, but it's the action to be to develop a life that is worth living, that is enjoyable to live. It's like that sort of effort to me is a larger accomplishment than, I don't know, just being born totally okay. And then you just go through your life with, like none of these events happening. Is
Right.
that,
No,
yeah.
it totally makes sense to me because I feel actually kind of bad. I like there are surface dwellers, right?
Correct.
My late
Yes.
husband, we used to talk about that. I was like, it's like they're water bugs on the surface of life and they're just scooting along, right? And all of
Yeah.
this stuff. And I was like, why was I chosen to be the person who lives on the bottom of the ocean floor, in the dark with the flashy fish, the fish who have like
They're called
get
anglers.
right, who have their own like electricity. Like I feel like that's who I am. And then there's these people who are happily just skimming along the surface of life without any real things happening. But it is, like you said, you go to a point where you appreciate that, and have such a deep appreciation for the length of our lives, right? Time, right? That's all we have. We have time and love. That's all we have. What are we going to do with it? And also I'll throw out there 20 months sober.
20 months?
20 months.
Wait. What's your date?
It was 2019. It was the last Sunday of July, whatever that date is.
August 15th, 2019.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. And when people talk about that, because I had my first beer at 9.
Ooh.
At 9. So I have I'll be 60 this year. So basically 50 years of my life has been using and abusing alcohol in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the only time I've ever stopped for me. I stopped when my mother was dying. I stopped when I was trying to get pregnant and while I was breastfeeding. I stopped as soon as my late husband was diagnosed. It was always so I knew I needed to be present. I was capable of stopping, but outside of those events, I did not ever choose to do it just for my own crisis of being.
Yep.
And so this time, and I won't say it was easy, but the choice was for me. I was like, again, time. Like, how much more do I have? And do I want to hate myself so many mornings when I wake up?
Yeah.
Is that really what I want? The answer was no. And now anything can happen. But I cannot think of a reason why I'd ever pick up a drink again, because the clarity of mind, the clarity of the decisions and how I make my decisions now, and how I even have a thought process when I'm making decisions,
Mm-hmm.
so different.
Well, and for me, the not ever wanting to go back is recognizing why I'd want to drink in the first place. It's just to feel a different feeling than what I'm already feeling. Sure, sometimes it's just, social. I remember last summer it was kind of hard as it started getting warmer. You're like, oh man, a nice refreshing beer would be awesome right now. But then,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, like sure, it tastes good and you have a nice feeling, but then it's not serving my greater mission of like, all this physical activity. I was still crushing workouts and things like that when I was drinking, but it wasn't as good. It
Right.
wasn't as fulfilling. It was like just kind of like slugging through these things. I had like a low grade hangover for years.
Right. Right. And when you're sweating, you're sweating alcohol. Like,
Yeah.
like I could smell it.
Yeah. And the tricky thing about addiction is the addiction tells you, or it was telling me, all of these like rational, logical thoughts as to why I don't need to stop drinking. I'm still a great mom. I'm not drinking and driving. I'm not drinking during the day. I can totally control it. I'm still doing workouts. I'm still getting all of my work done. It's not like affecting anything, but it really was. The other thing that keeps me from picking up again is I'm really stubborn. And so I don't ever want to have to say a different date that is my alcohol-free date. Like I have all these days racked up. I am not starting over. And if I need to, I certainly will, because that's, something that happens just because you give up something or you go through detox or go through rehab or, whatever the level of giving up you need to do, relapse happens, especially a lot. I think during this pandemic, I know a lot of people have
Oh
relapsed,
my gosh, yes.
and the beauty is that we do get to start over.
Right.
But that's one of the thoughts I think is like, I would really love a beer right now, but then I'm going to have a day one again. And I don't want to do that. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. I just had my most recent day of wanting a drink was Sunday. My email hadn't worked since Thursday, and 3 hours Sunday morning, I finally got it to work again. And I went out to the other end of the house and I looked at my husband. I said, now 20 months ago, 21 months ago, this would be the moment I'd make myself a White Russian. Because victory has been served. And now all that aggravation and stuff, I need a doggy downer to slip into, right? And he's like, well, vodka doesn't go bad because it's all still here in the house. He quit
Wow.
Yeah, he actually stopped drinking the day I did.
You did?
Yeah, when I came out and I talked to him and I said, I just need to stop. And he just listened to everything. And then he looked at me and he said, well, I've done this enough too. There's no reason I need to keep drinking. I don't think I'd be 20 months.
Yeah.
If that didn't happen.
Yeah. It's hard to
right.
be with someone who's still.
Yeah. So, and he goes, and he smiles and he goes, so just one then. I said, I can't, because one will turn into however many it takes before I pass out on the couch. And then I wake up at some point and I'm going to hate myself so badly. And nope, not today. I can't do it. I like not hating myself on that level. So no.
Yeah, it's so powerful to learn why we're doing it. And as depressed people, it's just it's looking for salvation outside of ourselves, when really it's like, you just got to get underneath the shit that's in here. Correct. To get to the place where you want to be.
Right. Because everybody has different reasons why they use and abuse, right? For me, a lot of the times it was so that I didn't ask for what I needed from people in relationship. Okay. So, it was easier to, instead of having a lot of resentment and not getting what I need out of this particular relationship, we'll start with my husband, my son's father, it would be like, oh, he just let me know he's on his way home. He'll be home in 20 minutes. Vodka and soda now. Because by the time he gets here, I'll be on my second vodka and soda, and those things that I want to bring to the table that are going to be difficult to talk about and he's not going to want to budge on, I'll let him go. So that turns into, 12 years of letting it go.
Yeah. When it really wasn't letting it go.
No, it was just
like tamping it down. Is that
right? Yeah.
Pacifying
yourself.
To not have the uncomfortable conversation.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. Man. Humans, am I right?
Yes. I tell people all the time, like, the human race is the most fascinating and frustrating thing on the planet in equal measures. Like, so fantastically frustrating and fantastic. Like,
but something that I don't know if this is a skill that I developed because, I'm always trying to make sense of everything. And I love animals, very interested in nature. So a lot of times I try to figure out whatever skill we have, like what is the purpose for that? Because if you think of every living thing on earth, they all have a purpose. So like my daughter was just saying, like, how did we ever start just keeping dogs? And I said, well, certain breeds have a certain purpose, with the farm animals or things like that. So in trying to think of these abilities that we have, or even sometimes these difficult things that we deal with, like, what is the purpose for this? And something that I've just come to believe is we are these emotional beings because we have to be. So if we were not emotional beings, we wouldn't be connected to our children, and then we wouldn't take care of them to then have them grow up and have more babies and keep propagating the species. But something that I think that we have so big over the animals is our curiosity. Our curiosity is what had us go from being, cave people to building houses and building cities and inventing electricity and the internet and things. It's our curiosity and our need to connect and try to better ourselves. But at the same time, of course, a lot of it has gone wrong and we're destroying a lot of things. But yeah, so just trying to think of like, well, this depression and anxiety, it's got to be for something. And so just trying to figure out how to make that into something productive.
Right.
Yeah. And you said it earlier, like, why am I like the anglerfish with the light at the bottom of the ocean? I think I certainly am that too. And I think a lot of people who don't even recognize that they are that have the same ability, but they just don't talk about it. They don't know that they have that power. We're here because we can be, because
Right.
we can. We're talking about it because we can.
Right. Right. And like, when people say, well, you coach, what's your niche? I was like, I don't know if it's a niche, but resilience is my jam. And it's not just something I picked out
The
of
hashtag resilience is my jam. Yeah.
Right? It's not just something I picked out of a hat. It's because I have thrived. Like, don't ever call me a survivor. I have thrived through this laundry list of things, starting with being a small child and being physically, sexually, and mentally abused. Right. So what got me through that? It's resilience at its core. Right. And just because I happen to have a strong resilience, why can't I teach others to have one? You can. It's like a muscle, right? It's like a muscle. The more we practice and we support it with the right things, the more it will grow and the stronger it will get. And it doesn't mean you're not going to feel things and you're not going to get knocked down. It's just that you pop up a lot faster. That is all.
Well, yeah. And you are resilient because you were put in those scenarios where your choice, and I'm sure it wasn't even a conscious choice, was to flex the resiliency muscle and build it, or not do that.
Right.
And so you have it because you developed it. You weren't just like blessed with it or given it. You made it. And because you made it, you know that other people can make their own as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I can remember being in therapy after my husband walked out, and she looked at me one day, she goes, I think we need to talk about when your last session is going to be. And I went, what the fuck are you talking about? And she goes, well, I think you're good now. I think you've reached a point, and remember, if things get hard, you can always come back. I said, I've reached the top of this. That means the only place for me to go is down. This sounds horrible. And she goes, well, sure, but also, why can't you just stay at the top and play? Oh, wait, I can do that? I could stay at the top. I don't have to slide down. She goes, yeah, Dawn, there's more than one choice.
I was graduated from therapy as well. I was grief counseling, and she was like, okay, so, it's kind of just time to move forward. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Because I was like, well, does that mean I'm like over it? No, it's that I've developed the tools to help myself move throughout my life. I certainly think that we should have a standby therapist all the time because events come up, and that's an important thing to recognize, and something that I feel like maybe we don't talk about enough is like, you and I, we've experienced really hard things and gotten through them, and though hard things are going to happen again and again and again, it's not just like, I'm just good now, and you don't need to check on me, and it's just because we made it over one hump doesn't mean there's not going to be another one, which for me has given me the ability to appreciate. It's like really grown my gratitude. I appreciate smallest things, like the buds on the trees or the freckles on my daughter's face, or I don't know, my dog's face, every single part of his face.
No, yes, absolutely. And the other thing about it too is, like, I even say this like on my website. It's like, there's my laundry list, and I went all through all these things, and I met a boy when I was 14, and we're married now. I have no idea what the future brings. That doesn't mean he's going to be with me forever, right? I already have the lessons of people don't stay for different reasons, right? Or
Mhm.
whatever, things happen, life happens, death happens. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I know looking back at my life, I'll be okay. It'll be hard, but I'll be okay. Right? Like
Does that make you appreciate the day to day with him now
so
more
much.
so than ever?
So much,
Same.
when, because we all get to those places, things are happening in our life where we're a little overtaxed and, oh, COVID and all the weirdness around that. And all of that tension and that stuff builds up. And the person closest to you is where you throw your shit,
Oh, yep. I know
right?
this. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've gotten really good at recognizing when I'm gathering the shit and getting ready to fling it. And I stop and I breathe and I look at him and go, I'm so fucking lucky. And he is undeserving of this shit right now because kindness is his superpower. Like he's the kindest person. Um, and no matter what I bring to the table, that is what I am met with. So why would I even think about throwing shit his way? You know, like this is my happy place right now. Like I've been given this other chance at this really beautiful life. I have 2 bonus boys now to go along with my son that I gave birth to. I have 2 bonus boys. Why would I throw shit at any of these people? Let me just throw it at the wall over here so I can get it away from me. But yes, everything I've gone through has brought me to a different level of appreciation and gratitude, like you said. Like I don't know my life anymore without my gratitude practice,
Mhm.
my self-love practice,
Yeah.
right? That's a big part of gratitude, is knowing just what an awesome person you are. Wow, we all have our foibles and the things about us that aren't so great, but there are really great things that we could focus on and love ourselves for,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And there is nobody else like us. There are people that may be similar and have, like we have a lot of similar things,
Mhm.
right, that we've connected on. And by the way, this is our first ever conversation. And when I say conversations with friends, we may not be friends at the beginning of the conversation, but I have yet to end a conversation with a new person where I don't feel like I'm so glad that person has been in my orbit. Even if this is the only time you're in my orbit, I'm better for having known you just for this hour, right?
Oh, I'm so glad you said that because while you were speaking, I was like, oh my God, like we should hang out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Please,
Because you know
anytime.
why? Because we're willing to we'll go deep right away.
Correct.
Yeah. And those are the conversations that I want to have. Those are the people that I want to be around, is like, let's go way below the surface. And
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I have found that serves me really well, especially in awkward situations. It's like if something presents itself and I can crack that a vulnerability about myself open,
Mhm.
right? It's
Yeah.
always scary. You never really know how it's going to be accepted. But every time it takes me to a place where those meetings or whatever was, that thing that's happening,
Mhm.
it takes me to a different place than it would have been if I had held that and kept it to myself.
Yeah.
It opens doors every time, every time.
Yes. Sharing is a contribution to the group. We say that all the time in like these programs that we lead at the studio or like at a yoga teacher training, because the style of yoga that I teach is called Baptiste yoga. It's
Mhm.
very much about inquiry, in addition to the physical practice and meditation. But yeah, when a person is sharing, you're contributing to the group as a whole. And right now the group is you and I and whoever's listening or watching. But also like the whole group, the group of humanity. Like we can be the example of what it is to share. And it's not um it's for giving. It's not like about me because like we
Correct.
have this attention. It's just like, hey, let me share this thing, and then you can have whatever works for you to take from it, and then maybe you share with me. And we're just all passing it around.
Right. And it's all healing, by
Yeah,
the
yeah,
way,
yeah,
right? Like my cracking my vulnerability open gives you an opportunity to crack yours open and heal.
yeah,
right? Because I'm not cracking mine open because I want it to be dissected. I'm doing it honestly because I really don't know any other way, right? Like I really don't. Like I'm human. This is my humanness.
Well, yeah, and when you said crack open, it's like if you think of something in a shell, like I don't know, like a baby chick or something in a shell, and then the cracks happen in the shell, then the chick gets to come out and be born and experience all the things. It's the same as like a lot of times I think of our vulnerability or our fear or depression or anxiety is like the basement or the attic that's like dark and full of cobwebs. But then when you start to open the windows and let the light in, it's not such a scary place to be. Like you put cracks in to let these things out to then relate with other people, but also like it lets it off of you too.
Yes.
Keeping it in and like keeping
Oh my
secrets
God.
are the heaviest thing you could carry. In
Right.
addition to resentment, sure. But yeah, we gotta let it out, man. Let it out.
Yes. Yes. So on that note, is there anything else that you would like to leave us with before we close this interview?
Hmm.
Anything
Like what
that
I'm up,
what's that?
like what I'm up to, or
Anything that you're up to, any resources that we didn't talk about that need to be talked about, how people can find you, which will be attached to this. And if you can't find them, hit me up and I will hook you up. Any last thoughts, wraps, anything before we?
sure. So the great resource is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Our local chapter is AFSP Capital Region. They're hosting the Hike for Hope, which is coming up in May. It's May 23rd. It's a Sunday. And so that's a fundraising effort. People are going to climb Prospect Mountain. The day before, I'm going to do what's called the Saranac Sixer Ultra. So it's 6 mountains around Saranac Lake.
Ah,
I'll climb all of them on the same day to raise more money for AFSP. And so I guess like what I would want someone to take away from this conversation is A, donate to my fundraiser. B, find something that makes you feel good about yourself, accomplished, whether it's puzzles, reading, writing, but really the physical aspect to me is so important. So just moving my body in any way to like get things out and like start to appreciate my body and what it does for me has been key in my recovery. So if you try something, you don't like it, try something else. Just keep going. And it's actually never too late to begin again. It doesn't matter if you're 60, like you said, 80, whether you've got 2 arms and 2 legs or you're sitting in a wheelchair, there's something always that can be done. We're not done until we're done.
right. And your body is remarkably resilient. And I am surprised at any time I push it and ask more of it, it rises to the occasion. So don't sit back and think that you have an out just because you're an age.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely not true. You know, your body doesn't give up until you do.
That's right. That is
Right?
right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. This was such a good conversation. I really appreciate you being openly vulnerable with me
Yeah.
and sharing so deeply. I hope you have a really great rest of your day. I will connect with you on the other side of this. And by that, I mean, I'm really leaving the meeting. We'll be leaving the meeting and I'll hit you up somewhere else.
Okay.
But thank you. In case that was confusing because words.
I
Um,
got you.
okay. But everybody, thank you for being present for our conversation. Anybody who needs to reach out, like if you feel a connection to me, you feel a connection to Jess, you can't find Jess, again, I will hook you up. Reach out to me. People do it all the time after these interviews. Feel free to tell me your stuff, man, or just to say thank you. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing it. Please take care. And I'll see you on the other side.
Bye, Dawn. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.